Hey there, friends. Welcome to this Life Without Limits. I'm your host, Weston, and today's episode really represents a turning point for me in my cancer journey, a turning point in how I've lived my life thus far, and also a turning point in how I've been using this podcast. So it's been about a year since I was diagnosed with cancer, and I began radiation and chemo treatments. In fact, it was about a year ago on Labor Day. And as I've moved through my 53rd birthday season and into the anniversary of really this life-changing initiation, I've been reflecting on the treatment interventions I experienced since the last episode I released in May, and the choices that I'm making to move towards a greater sense of sovereignty and intention with respect to my overall health and well-being. So this episode will be a little bit of an update on what's been going on with me health-wise. I always like to do a little bit of a standard disclaimer that there may be some triggering imagery that I share here. So especially for those of you that are watching on YouTube, just be aware of that. We're going to get into it pretty quickly here. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and get started. So the last episode I released was back in May, and I was just about a week out from having a neck dissection surgery to remove some lymph nodes from the right side of my neck where the primary tumor was, and some of the metastasis into the lymph nodes there. And that surgery went really, really well. I was hospitalized for about 24 hours just to make sure that the wounds were healing well, and I had a drain in my neck, and the hospital staff wanted to make sure that the drain was working correctly before they sent me home. And so I left the hospital and came back to recover for about a week. And in that time, the pathology reports came back, and it showed that there was cancer in that primary lymph node, but no malignancy in any of the other nodes that they removed during the procedure. And so we were seeing this as really positive news. And the reason why is, if you recall, or if you don't recall, the blood test that I receive as part of the surveillance for the disease in my body had showed a low positive level back in April and in May. And so there was some concern that, there was still disease in my body, and we felt like going in and getting this lymph node out would be the source of that reading. And so the fact that that lymph node had cancer in it was positive, right? So we saw that we were heading to the right target, and so the team was feeling really good after those results. And so about 10 days later, I had the drain removed from my neck. And just to sort of speak a little bit on the ongoing side effects, here in this area, there's still a real lack of touch sensitivity. So I can't, like where my scar is, I can't really feel myself touching my neck there. There's a lot of stiffness on this side. You can imagine it's just like a lot of scar tissue. Some of the, motor abilities of that area are a little bit affected. I have some stiffness and some soreness in my neck. I have more difficulty swallowing now than I did post chemo and radiation. And there was a lot of concern, even during that treatment phase, that, the doctors and the therapists wanted me to keep doing these neck exercises to make sure that I, had some mobility and I could do some swallowing and wouldn't have any problem with that. And so I do notice that I have a little bit more trouble swallowing now, but frankly, I think it's related to, not only the scar tissue, the muscle being affected in there, but also some of the nerves that got a little bonked around, and also have some weakness and some stiffness and some burning in this right shoulder. So I've been, it's been a few months now, and I've been in the gym, and I'm able to, have pretty good range of motion, which is exciting. A lot of people, really have to PT that stuff pretty hardcore. So, I trust that as my body continues to heal, that, that mobility is going to come back and the pain and stiffness will, continue to recede. So, that kind of wrapped up June, and as we move into, wrapped up May, and as we move into June, again, you may recall from the last episode that I had begun to have some gum recession in my mouth, where the radiation treatments had, basically burned the vasculature inside of my jawbone. And what was happening there was that I had, kind of developed a condition called osteonecrosis, which is due to the radiation therapy. And I went to see the dentist and the oral surgeon there at Johns Hopkins, and they determined that because of the deterioration of the jawbone at that, it's my backmost molar on the bottom, that they needed to remove that tooth. So we set up a date to get that done for later on in the month. I did have some follow-up blood tests done in early June, with the expectations, the team's expectations that there should that the results should go completely to zero after this surgery. And so we had that done, and in late June, in fact on the 23rd of June, I went and I got a call from my chemo doctor in Baltimore, and he said that the blood test, the level in my blood had actually increased slightly. So just to, again, give you a context for this, and I'm going to put a graphic up on the video version of this, that when I began, and actually before I began treatment last year, the level of disease in my blood, the number that that test returned, was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000, very high. In fact, they said it was some of the highest numbers that they'd ever really seen. And that's not a good thing. And then after the chemo and radiation treatments completed, and I think this was maybe in January or February, I got the blood test, and it was around 150. So not zero, but still not nothing. I took another one in April, I believe. That one came back and was at 450. And this one in June came back with a value somewhere around 700. So it's actually, the value is actually increasing, which is really concerning for the team, because they were pretty sure that going in and taking out that lymph node would have really brought everything down to nothing, and I would have been essentially cured. So what we had was really no consensus from the team. And what I mean by the team is it's the surgeon, it's the chemo doc, it's the radiation doc, and basically the entire oncology team at Johns Hopkins. They have a meeting every week to discuss their cases, and they were really split between let's wait and see how this goes. It's a slow growing cancer, and the other side of that was a recommendation for immunotherapy, to begin immunotherapy immediately. The drug that they were recommending is called Keytruda, and that drug in particular is not without its, potential really bad side effects. And so, like long-term side effects, along the lines of liver disease, pancreatic disease, nerve damage. So, that was kind of the choice that I needed to make at that point. And of course, Crea and I were both pretty devastated by that news. I think we, as we've gone down this path, we've really, had these waves of hope that, these interventions would really, knock this out. And yet, here we are, getting this news and, having to make a decision about, how we want to move forward, and so, my intuition was to, and still is, and I'll speak a little bit more about this as we go, but was to wait and see, to let my body recover from everything that it's been through for the last year, to really focus on what I can control, and to know that, we've got immunotherapy in our back pocket. We're going to keep up with the surveillance scans and blood tests and see if we can't just track this thing. So on June 24th, I went back to Baltimore to have this tooth extraction done, and it went really well. The subsequent healing process went really smoothly. I went back a couple of weeks later to have the sutures removed from the place where they pulled the tooth, and everybody confirmed that, it looked like it was healing really well, despite the fact that it just feels weird that I have no tooth back there. And I'm still, learning how to chew on the right side of my mouth in a way that I trust myself, I guess. So in July, I also had a follow-up PET scan, because it had been a while, maybe since February or March since I had one. And they wanted to wait until, the surgery site was all nice and healed up. So they give me a PET scan, and the results come back with really showing no obvious source of where this disease might be. So despite the rising NAVDX values, there's no really clear source of that in my body, which, again, to some of the people on my team was very concerning. To others, they were like, well, at this point, you're in uncharted territory. Like, there are so few people who have this outcome that we really don't know what to do. And so I think one point to note here is that, everybody sees the disease at this point as persistent. It's not recurrent, which would mean, I would have been cured, or the disease would have been eradicated and then come back in another location in the body, right? So, and I think, for me, that's a really important literal and figurative distinction between persistent and recurrent. Words have a lot of meaning, and so I took that really as the opportunity for me to consolidate the power in my hands, the decision making in my hands, and to really, at that point, I sat down with Crea, and I talked to her. I really felt into this. It wasn't a knee jerk reaction. It was like, well, what's within my control here, and what can I do to effectively bring my body back into harmony, to create a environment of healing and vitality across the board, and so looking at things like nutrition, supplementation, hydration, exercise, meditation and prayer, visualizing myself as vibrant and healthy, free of disease and anything that encumbers me, right? In a lot of ways, really cleansing my identity. All the identities that I have accumulated, whether they were put on me or I chose them, my sense was that I've moved further and further away from the truth of who I am and what's possible in this lifetime, right? So I really was wanting to get curious about what persistent blocks or stories or beliefs that I hold that perpetuates this sense of lack or unworthiness or illness, right? So what is persisting in my life that's keeping me from optimal health, right? So, and also asking the question, like, what's at stake if I allow that illness or that disease to remain in me? And what would it be like if I truly lived into this idea of a life without limitations? Okay, so that is where I'm at in July. And, the theme that I kind of entered that period of time with was really, this question of how can I live with intention and be committed to aligned action. And it's important to understand that, like, I could feel myself getting emotional thinking about this. It's hard for me to convey how challenging this has been emotionally for myself and for Kreia, and how hard it has been for us to maintain a sense of connection in our relationship over the year. And I'm just sharing that because, we sort of wrapped up the month of July in Asheville, leading a weekend retreat there, which is something that we both really, really love to do. She had asked me to prepare food for the group that weekend. It's the first time I'd ever done that. And I was really excited about it, and I've never been in service in that way before. So I was really looking forward to that. But what ended up happening was really interesting. Like, over the course of the weekend, I was preparing all this delicious food. I was, nourishing everyone. And I was also in a rush. I was running back and forth into town for groceries, and I couldn't really, I didn't make the time for myself to eat in the way that I should. And this is just goes to show you that the little things matter, right? So when I was at the store, I had picked up like a cold cut sandwich, like this big, like foot long Subway sandwich, and had brought it back to the house where we were holding the workshop, and we had a team meeting, and I'm sitting there eating this sandwich, and I think, man, it's got meat on it, it's got cheese, vegetables, I chose whole wheat bread, and yet her watching me eat that sandwich triggered something inside of her that made her so angry at me and so scared and so disconnected. Like watching me eat that sandwich after everything that we had been through and all these things I've been talking about nutrition and, health and all of that for my body. Watching me eat this sandwich, she basically shared this with me later, that she was like, it's like you don't even fucking care about yourself. And, obviously I'm getting emotional about it now because like I realize how much she cares for me and how much she loves me and how much she wants me to live into this vision that I have for my life. But at the moment I was like, damn, man, like if I only wouldn't have bought that fucking sandwich, everything would have been fine, right? And so I'll tell you, like that retreat was a bumpy ride for a lot of reasons. But, we came out of it in a really bad place. I wasn't really even sure how bad of a place it was, but she was at the point where she was like, I don't really actually know if I want to be in this relationship anymore with you. And I was like, man, I understand, I understand, like it has been grueling, and she's like, to see you making these decisions for yourself, it's like you don't even give a shit. And I took that in. I was like, okay, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. And I'm not sure what to do about that. I'm sitting with how I want to be right now. And so we wrapped up the retreat, and we had planned this trip down to North Carolina as with some space on both sides, so that we could see some friends, so we could have some downtime. And interestingly enough, she had booked what could only really be described as like a bee, meaning bees, sound and medicine healing for us, with some people that she got connected to through our community. And it's interesting because we went there a couple of days after the retreat ended. And she and I laugh now about it because I was literally taking corners at like high speed, just trying to get to this place so that we could have this experience, that we could journey together. We could receive this sound healing together. We could meet these people who were supposedly incredible. I had no idea really where I was going. I didn't know any of this. She just knew, go to this address. That's what we're doing today. And so, really what ensued, and I won't go into all the details of the experience, but it was, probably one of the most profound journeys that I have had, probably outside of Vipassana, certainly where medicine was involved. And, in the integration process afterwards, the guy who was doing the sound bath, he was, the facilitator, his partner, they were the facilitators. They were holding, Kreia and I, also our friend Deborah, was holding the two of us in this container. And, I had realized that, part of the role that I had seen for myself in this lifetime was carrying the lament and the sadness of the world, in me. I don't process strong emotions with anger. I usually process it with sadness and like deep melancholy. And I realized that, when I reflect back on my life, a lot of my, I guess, emotional tone, color is maybe sad. Certainly over the last several years, it's been sad. And, so when we were talking integration, the choice was offered to me, literally the choice of, you can choose life or you can choose death. That's where you're at right now. And, there was this realization and this offering that, there is no room in me for fear or sadness anymore. There's no room in this body for fear or sadness anymore. I can feel it. I can let it flow through me. I can be a channel and not a vessel for those things. And so what's interesting about being a channel and not a vessel, and this is the nature of integration, right, is that I was just in a psychedelic facilitator training last week, and one of the speakers talked about how she's a channel and not a vessel, right? Like how these things come from spirit through her. And so that's just an example of how, like this experience happened in late July, and here we are a few months later, and it lands, like the integration piece, the how to be in the world piece lands for me, right? To channel these things through. And so anyway, I just owe like such a huge debt of gratitude, first of all, to Kreia for her intuition about creating that opportunity for the two of us. It, healed us, basically. We came out of that experience rededicated to love, rededicated to our purpose, rededicated to who we want to be in the world as individuals, who we want to be in partnership, how we want to work in the world, how we want to walk in the world. So it was incredible, and I can't say thank you enough to our friends River and Hadley, and to Deborah for welcoming us into your space. It changed me, and I know it certainly changed Kreia. So thank you for that. And so, needless to say, we left Asheville really on a high note, and on our way out of town, we went by and saw our friend Candace, just for a quick 15-minute hug and hello. And interestingly enough, and I'm just realizing that this is how Spirit works, is in that conversation that we had with Candace, I had talked to her about what she was doing for work now. She mentioned she was working for a really cool startup. And I said, well, hey, if you ever need any help in product, I have a background in that realm. And that 5-minute interaction began a series of conversations about a possible role with that organization. And so we left Asheville. I don't really know how to say it other than on a high with what's possible. And so, we headed out to the West Coast, or to the East Coast, got ourselves in the water for a couple of days, and came back home, hung out with my son for a little bit, which was great. And, coming from Asheville and into August, it's really just defined by blessings and answers to prayer. My birthday is on August 4th. And we had planned a trip up to New Jersey to just get out of town for a little while. And, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about my birthday day. It really started out with a beautiful sunrise walk. I got up super early in the morning. I saw some deer feeding in this little field. I got to see Venus and Jupiter in the early morning sky, which was incredible. I'd never really taken the time to see that. And I was just like, holy shit, that's Jupiter out there that I can see. I was just basically stunned by how incredible the universe is and how incredible this experience of life is. I led a insight timer meditation for my birthday that morning, which is awesome. We took a trip to Asbury Park in New Jersey. Just had a little dip in the ocean. I had 2 great interview conversations from the lobby of a hotel. And we finished up the day with a really amazing dinner at my friend Eric's restaurant. And I should mention also that while we were sitting out at the beach, I'm having a conversation with Kreia, and I feel something land on my hat. And I look at my hat, and a seagull had shit on my hat. So I saw that as a sign from nature, like a birthday blessing from nature. So that was amazing. And we went from Asbury Park up to Wayne, New Jersey, where we sat in a incredibly beautiful Wachuma ceremony on the 5th of August with this new teacher and his team, who were really nothing short of inspiring. And they really captured so many elements of how I believe that medicine should be held, how it should be taught. There were rituals, there was prayer, there was fire. There were multiple times where the group came back into a circle and received teachings. And yeah, it was just that there was a woman there who played live music, Shahaf Schwartzman, who was just an angel. And incidentally, her name, Shahaf, means seagull. And so I had to share a moment with her as she was serving me hape, that I had a seagull shit on my head for my birthday. And so it felt only appropriate that I received a hape from a seagull as well. So anyway, that ceremony was incredible. We spent some time with Kreia's family, just working around their house and enjoying each other's company. We finished up that first week of August in the city. A friend of ours let us stay in her apartment in Uptown, and we went to see the new Jeff Buckley documentary, which was absolutely stunning. I have been a Jeff Buckley fan since 1995. When the Grace record came out, I've listened to that record probably 1,000 times. That might even be too little. And I, over the course of my career as a musician and a songwriter, came into orbit with some of the musicians that were around Jeff in his lifetime. Had the opportunity to have lunch with his mom at some point a long time ago. And I even, built a website for one of his fan club projects back when I lived in New York. So I would just say that I am a big Jeff Buckley fan. And so seeing that documentary come to life, seeing him come back to life, his voice, it was just an incredible experience. And I recommend you find a way to watch that documentary. It was beautiful. And we went out to grab sushi before the movie that night. And as Kreia and I were walking into the sushi restaurant down in the Lower East Side, I got a WhatsApp message from the team for this startup that they extended a verbal offering to join them on this new project. And so, beautiful night in New York, job offer. I'm not even calling it a job. It's a collaboration opportunity. Because because we've all had jobs, and this is not that. So got the documentary. It was just an incredible time. And then a couple days later, my son Arlo came up to the city to spend really kind of like it wasn't his last week of summer, but kind of next to last week, hanging out in the city. He brought a friend of his with him. And we spent some time touring a couple of colleges. We went to City College and Fordham. They did a lot of city exploration. They climbed a crane in downtown New York, which was bonkers. And then, I just had the opportunity to have some really good catch-up time with some friends of mine in the city. And so New York was really just beautiful, and what I realized was that, I just had this sense that, my life is such a gift. And I am realizing, and again, this is part of the integration process for me, that I am literally speaking into reality the life that I desire to create for myself, the way I want to be in the world, the way I want to walk in the world, the work that I want to do in this world, the people that I want to collaborate with. I'm using my voice to be very clear and very precise about how I want my life to unfold. And so that's really landing for me in a huge way at this point, and so we returned back home in late August to get Arlo started on school. His last year of high school, senior year, which is incredible. And then, Kreia and I, we went out to Ohio over Labor Day weekend to lead a retreat together. And this was really the first time since winter that we have led, because the Asheville group, she was leading with another facilitator. I was really in charge of kitchen ministry. And so in Ohio, I had kind of this dual role of, food and facilitation. And we went into that weekend committed to bringing forward a new format that was truer to who we are as people, truer to who we are as facilitators, truer to who we just want to be as we build community together. And everything about that trip was so easy, from how easy it was to pack the truck to how easy it was to, move from Maryland to Ohio, how easy the weekend went. And we had 3 nights of heart and cannabis and wachuma. Everyone received beautifully. The food was incredible. The music was incredible. Everyone's experience and integration was powerful. We had some powerful experiences in that container. And everyone emerged so solid, I think is a word I could use. It was the kind of experience that, as someone who facilitates this work, that you hope to bring. Yeah, you hope to bring, and it was just really, it was the content was very easeful. It came through very easeful. It was received in a very incredible way by, those who were in attendance. And, I just got to give a shout out to our incredible team there. Our friend Vat, Jules, Meg, Erica, just so grateful for your pristine service and your selfless offerings of your hearts and your care. To Mama Jane and Kevin for opening your house for us. And yeah, just so grateful to all of you. I have to give a special shout out to my man Bilal, who will probably be listening to this podcast, for his encouragement for me to get back on the podcasting horse. we had a moment where he shared with me that people are listening and that this podcast is changing lives. I would never say that personally, but that came through him, and I was just so grateful to receive that. So, Bilal, if you're listening to this, or when you're listening to this, I just want to say thank you, brother. I really appreciate you for that. And here we are. I promise to be more diligent about my podcasting. So coming into September, y'all, I'm just feeling like completely reborn. I had an appointment earlier this week. I'm recording this on Monday, September 15th. So I guess it's been a week since I had a checkup with Dr. Fakhri, my surgeon. Took a look at my neck. She's very pleased with how the healing is going. She stuck the camera down my nose and looked in my, in my throat, looked at the site of where the tumor was, the back of my tongue. She was very pleased with how everything looks in there. Of course, we were still talking about, this residual disease in my body. And she, her recommendation and position is for immunotherapy. I shared with her, my commitment right now to some self-healing and to staying committed to, the surveillance of the scans and the blood tests. And she was like, yeah, you ultimately hold the key here to how this goes for you. And so really enjoyed getting to spend time with her. I had an appointment right after that with my infectious disease doctor, throwing this thing way back to the lymph nodes that were lighting up in my chest. And she cleared me as well. So a couple of good checkups. And just to kind of like clearly describe the path forward for these next 6 months, for me, is really focused on a multidisciplinary and a holistic approach to healing. No special diets and nothing extreme, right? I've had people recommend keto to me. I've had people recommend only plants to me. I've had people recommend, 20-day water fast to me, all of which I appreciate and respect and am grateful for. But intuitively, what I feel is that, I don't eat poorly to begin with, but sharpening up these inputs, right? So eating mostly plant-based and, good, clean, organic meats when I can source those, limiting excess sugar, which for me painfully looks like no ice cream. I haven't eaten ice cream in a minute, but also maybe I'll have a cookie, right? Drinking lots of green tea, lots of dandelion tea. And then I wanted to talk specifically about the supplementation, which is really focused on supercharging my immune system. So every day I'm taking a D3 K2 supplement. I'm taking 1,000 milligrams of curcumin. So that's like a turmeric supplement with biopyrine, I think is how you say it. Anyhow, it's a black pepper. So it's turmeric and black pepper to make it more bioavailable. I'm taking a high dose omega-3 and also a 5 mushroom, medicinal mushroom blend, as well as this supplement called AHCC, which is new to me. I've done a lot of research around like what would be the best supplementation package for boosting my immune system and helping with this residual persistent situation with this disease. And so AHCC in particular has shown in human trials to help clear persistent HPV infections from the body. Most of the studies have been done in female patients, and this is like high dose AHCC. So for me, that's 4 capsules a day at bedtime. So most of the studies have been done on female patients with persistent HPV, but functionally should have a similar effect for me. So that is the supplementation package. And, really just kind of like beginning to land the plane on this part of the episode. What I'm realizing is that I need to make a commitment to living into the energy of this life without limits. I talk about it, I speak about it, I teach about it, right? But where are those parts of me that are still not living into that energy, right? There's a word that we've all heard before, abracadabra, right? And I only recently learned, like in the last year or so, that this is an old Aramaic word that translates into something like, it will be created as I say. Abracadabra. So our words are vibrations, and they have tremendous creative power, and they have tremendous destructive power. I mean, we see that every day in how our lives unfold. So the invitation here to myself and to you is to be mindful of how you speak about yourself, how you speak about your life, how you speak about others, how you speak about what's possible. Because these words, they ripple out into the world and far beyond that. And if I've learned anything over this last year, it's that anything is possible. Everything is possible. And I believe that with my whole being. My whole being. And there's a Lakota phrase that resonates with me deeply, and it's mitakweo-asin. And that phrase refers to all my relations, all sentient beings, all elements. And so my desire, my intention is to walk in this world in such a way that my thoughts, my words, my actions, my feelings are all in alignment with love, unconditional love, with compassion, and with empathy for myself and all my relations. To be a vessel of unconditional love, to hold unconditional love, and a channel of harmony and healing for all beings. And so with that, I'm putting a bookmark in these updates related to this cancer journey. I've been feeling like I'm ready to speak on some other important topics and related to some projects I've been envisioning, and to really once again begin inviting conversations into this space that support that vision of harmony and healing. So I will keep everybody updated as it feels appropriate. But for now, my journey with cancer is one where I am speaking into reality, a life of vibrance, health, optimal living, alignment, integrity, abundance, peace, love, freedom, all of those things. So with that, I'd like to shift gears, figuratively and literally, to talk about another topic that is near to my heart and has been so central to my life and the life of my family over the last 10 plus years. Some of you may know that September is Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month, and the Pavlov Foundation has played such an important role in raising money and awareness for research and quality of life programs for children and their families who are dealing with this disease in all of its varied forms. And every year, Pavlov across America sets out on a multi-day cycling adventure in an effort to shine a light on the great work being done by the healthcare professionals across the country to bring healing to these children. And, the Peloton, we do this in such a way that's fun and adventurous, and it really captures the spirit of the founder and my friend, Jeff Castellaz. You heard me mention Jeff in my last episode, and his son, Pablo, who would have been 22 this year. So just honoring Jeff and Pablo and Pablo's mom, Joanne, and their journey, and their courage and their connection and commitment to this work. So the ride this year is happening in Santa Rosa, California, from September 21st to the 25th. So just in a couple of days, riders from all over the country will be converging on that beautiful part of the country, united in this important cause. So for those of us who can't join, I won't be able to join this year. We'll be doing what's called pop-up rides from wherever we live as a show of solidarity with our brothers and sisters out there in Cali. And so for my part, I've been involved with Pavlov pretty consistently since 2011. In fact, the shirt that I have on today, I don't know if you can see that. Well, you can't if you're listening, but on YouTube, this is the shirt from the ride back in 2011. And, I kind of see myself as the originator of the pop-up ride. I think I can take credit for that because it was a key component to, not only my pre-event training for all the years that I did the Pavlov Across America ride, but also in my efforts to raise money and awareness about the foundation back when I lived in New Orleans. So I'm going to be doing some rides out here in the DC area from now really until the end of the year. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't be in Cali, but I'll be posting these ride efforts on Instagram, on Facebook, all in an effort to, do my part to support the work of the Pavlov Foundation and to raise a little money in the meantime. So there will be links in the show notes to my fundraising page. I'll also be, posting that link as I share on social media. And so please make sure you check that out and just know that any support that you offer, whether it's $5 or $500, it goes to a very important place. So yeah, with that, we'll close. But before I go, I just want to say that, you can always find me on Insight Timer. I'm leading meditations and offering courses there. So if you use Insight Timer to support your meditation practice and you don't already follow me, maybe check out my teacher page there. I have a second course in progress. This is a 28-day meditation course called Reclaiming Power, and it invites a conscious return to wholeness by helping you release inherited narratives, reclaim your energetic sovereignty, and embody bold, heart-aligned action. So I'm really excited to bring that forward. I've also been working on getting my book across the finish line. It's still probably going to take me about a year or so to get that done, but I'll be talking more about that in the coming months and also publishing some excerpts online for folks to check out. I've been developing a study group that I will be announcing in a month or so that will be diving into a particular book that has had a really powerful impact on me and on my vision for how we might begin to heal our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the world. So be on the lookout for that. And I've also been envisioning at least one multi-day retreat for men in the coming year. So I'm just speaking that out into the field to begin the process of calling those in who may find value and transformational opportunity in such an experience. So once again, just thank you for your support, your love, your prayers, your encouragement, your kindness, your generosity. Most of you will never know how deeply touched I have been over this last year. I mean, it has truly healed something deep and powerful inside of me. So thank you. Thank you. Just have boundless gratitude to God for my life, for all the love and many blessings I've been given in this lifetime. And I just send that love and blessings out to each and every one of you. And as always, just inviting you to be so good to yourselves. Be good to others and to all your relations. We'll see you back here next time. Peace.
That's it for this episode of This Life Without Limits. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and will join me again for future episodes. If you want to stay updated on new releases, hit the subscribe button below, and don't forget to check out the show notes for additional details and links. I'd also love to hear what you think about the content of this episode, so please feel welcome to drop any comments, thoughts, questions, critique, any of that below. Thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to next time. Until then, here's to a life without limits, my friends.